Welcome to another OU Insider Under the Visor podcast, Sooners podcast, powered by, and you didn't
Olipop.
There you go, Olipop. But if you were on the YouTube, you get to see the fact that he opened it up as he generally does.
If you're on the audio side, for whatever reason, we can't get the opening of the can to come through on the microphone. So,
yeah, well, Olipop, get it at your 4 convenient locations at Walmart, Target, Whole Foods, and Sprouts. It has minimal sugar. I think at most you'll get is 5% sugar. Or was it 4 grams of sugar?
5 grams of sugar is the most you'll ever find in one of these cans. They'll always have 9 grams of fiber. They'll always have prebiotics to enhance digestive health. And they taste exactly like your store brand mass-produced sodas. They come in 15 delicious flavors. There is an Olipop for you. So check them out and drinkolipop.com.
Or go and type in the code OU, or what is it? What is it? Champu 20 to get 20
is the promo code to get 20% off.
All right. Oklahoma. This is the pregame show. Obviously, Oklahoma plays SMU at 5 p.m. on Saturday. Oklahoma is coming in at number 20 and number 19 in the country, depending on what poll you look at. SMU is 1-0 after beating Louisiana Tech 38-14. They do have a starting quarterback by the name of Preston Stone, who is a 4-star out of high school. They do have a head coach in Rhett Lashley, who has been at Auburn. He's been at several other stops along the way and has become one of the top offensive minds in the country. And we also have a special guest that I did not welcome in to begin with, Travis Davidson. He's not a special guest. He will be doing the pregame podcast with us all year long.
Yeah, you're not special anymore, Trav. You've been a guest so many times. At this point, you're just a guest.
Anymore. That's fine. I've graduated past special. That's good.
All right. Guys, it's going to be on ESPN, I believe. ESPN. It's going to be on ESPN Plus. Is that what we're doing? Wow. All right.
Well, because it took place of we have to have a pay-per-view game.
Yeah. It's the pay-per-view.
So
that is the highest level pay-per-view game I've ever seen at Oklahoma. Quote pay-per-view. And it's not pay-per-view, folks, because you just go pay your $5.99 and you get it for ESPN Plus, right?
There's still payments involved in it. It's just not your traditional pay-per-view. But if you're watching this and you have older relatives, please help them now.
Yes.
I already know that I'm going to start getting text messages from older friends, relatives, whatnot, saying, I can't find the game. What's going on?
By the way, that video that OU football posted on Twitter starring Brandon Hall and Peyton Bowen, absolutely fantastic.
Right.
We all knew Brandon Hall was a hilarious human being before.
God, did I not?
Was on full display.
What happened? I have not.
Oh, did you miss this, Brandon?
They were walking through, the importance of getting a young person to help you out, and Peyton Bowen was the young person. No, it was fantastic.
Oh my God, is this really what I'm going to have to do?
Just bookmark it for after the podcast. Enlighten yourself.
Okay. So it came up on my notifications yesterday, and I just didn't. I saw Greg Nation start.
Yeah, Greg Nation taking his glasses off, trying to figure it out. It was awesome.
Yeah, but I just didn't. I don't know. But B Hall, that guy is one of the funniest human beings walking the face of the earth, and he's one of the nicest human beings too. So obviously Oklahoma won 73-0 yesterday or last Saturday. We haven't talked to you, Travis, since that took place. And obviously we're going to get to the SMU game because that's what this mostly is about. What can you glean from a 73-0 win? It's great. They shut them out, got the goose egg, right? And there were plenty of opportunities for Arkansas State to capitalize and at least get 3 points, and they couldn't do it because Oklahoma stopped them and made them kick long distance field goals. But outside of that, What stood out to you, and what can you glean going into the SMU game that makes you feel that? And we're going to get to this part too, the upset alert that everybody's talking about that Oklahoma's on at this point. And there's multiple national people that have brought this up, not just one, but multiple. Brett Sallier, I think your boy from On Three, what's his name? Parker.
JD Pickell.
JD Pickell, yeah, your boy brought up Oklahoma as the upset alert and then only put it at like 36%.
Yeah, he was clearly citing some analytical model that On Three must have, because to use exactly, he said we've got it at a 36% chance of an upset. So the we suggests it's not him making the call, and the 36% suggests it's also not a human making the call.
Okay, we're gonna get to all that in just a minute, but what can you glean from 73-0?
So, I'm sure we'll get to the upset, sentiment from the national folks, but I think 73-0, I think, without sounding too coachy with it, it's competitive depth. We should have trusted. What did the coaches talk
again?
What did the coaches talk about all offseason? They talked about two things more than anything: Gavin Freeman and competitive depth. What did we see in week 1? We saw Gavin Freeman have 100 yards in the first quarter, a couple touchdowns, our first, special teams touchdown, return touchdown since 2016. And then you saw competitive depth on display. I mean, no defender had more than 4 tackles because they were rotating a ton of guys in without much drop off at all. You get into the fourth quarter and you've got guys like PJ Adebawore and Jaden Rowe on the field. I mean, those are two of the most physically impressive people that have put on OU jerseys in a minute, at least in the upper echelon of that. So, I mean, the depth coming out, and what I liked was, in the past, we don't have the defensive depth to keep even bad teams out of the end zone late. Like a lot of what you saw, like with SMU. Like SMU didn't have the depth. That's why they gave up 14 points, late, right? It's you don't have the depth. With this, you get, not only the depth of actual physical talent that you have, but the mental edge to say, hey, look, I'm going to go out there, protect the shutout because we can. It's not a bunch of dudes just coming on that are overmatched because you've been paying attention to one side of the ball for so long. You've got true studs coming in now. And I think that's what you can take from it is these guys are going to be fresher than ever. We only played, 50 defensive snaps, something like that. I know we had 49 tackles as a team. So with that, a lot of people look at 2 numbers and it gets kind of frustrating. They say, oh, we don't have the high sack numbers, so we must not have gotten a good pass rush. Okay, well, that's not at all true. It can be schemed around, this, that, and the other. The other one is, oh, man, our leading tackler only had 4 tackles. Man, that's a bad performance. What? No, that isn't based in reality. A lot of what allowed a guy like Ethan Downs to rack up a ton of tackles for loss, tackles, things like that, Danny Stutzman leading the Big 12 in tackles last year, it's because they couldn't get off the field. They were playing more snaps than everybody. So in my mind, if they're able to just get off the field on 3rd down, 4th down, I think we held them to 2 of 14 on the money down, something like that. That's going to lead to abbreviated stats. And I think people are almost brainwashed into thinking, oh, if we didn't have somebody get 15 tackles, then it wasn't a good defensive performance. Oh, if we didn't have somebody get 6 sacks, or if as a team we didn't get 6, 7, 8 sacks, it wasn't a good defensive performance. No, the good defensive performance is you got off the field a ton, you won 3rd down like crazy, you held them to below 50 yards rushing, you held them below 50% completion percentage, and you gave up 0 points. You didn't allow them in the red zone once. That is a good defensive performance. So ignore the tackle numbers, ignore the sack numbers, and look at what really matters.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I had myself muted here, and I even turned my video off for some other reason. Yeah, no, I'm with you on the ignore the stats part. I'm just more going to be reserved. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to be reserved. Even going into this game, I think I learned, and I think OU fans in general, and I think the media like us learned last year that That's great and all that Oklahoma did what they did. And I do agree that one, OU didn't pull away late this time. They took care of business. They did what they were supposed to do. It wasn't like Kent State. It wasn't last year. I can't remember who they UTEP, where they opened up and they kind of struggled to start the game. They scored early, but then it kind of slowed down. And they didn't really put the pedal to the metal to them like they probably should have, to be honest. And I seen the comments in the YouTube comments from our live the other day that Brandon just can't be happy, 73-0, blah, blah, blah. And then some people are in there defending me and they're going, dude, like he's being realistic. Like, do y'all not remember last year? Like, hold your horses. I get it. And I get it. It was 1 year, 6-7. We talked about it. Multiple things cost Oklahoma last year. Multiple things. In particular, drop touchdown passes, mind you. Not just drop passes. I think there was like 70 points plus of touchdown passes dropped last year in those 7 losses. And they lost by 3 and 7 points in 5 or 6 of those. It was 5 of those 7 losses. So you're looking at a potential 10-2 season if somebody doesn't have the yips on a go route, essentially. And Dylan Gabriel looks a hell of a lot better because that probably adds another 600-700 yards to his passing total, and he's over 4,000. He's probably got 7-8 more touchdowns, so he's in the 40s instead of the 30s. Everything looks completely different if you do your job, if you're an Oklahoma football player. And I think that is where the difference was in week 1. Everybody did their job. Like, if you came in late, you preserved the shutout. And Ted Roof said it. Like, what was the difference? He said, well, our first and second stringers were engaged on the sidelines. They are screaming at the third and fourth stringers, telling them what they need to do, what these calls are doing, and they're going halfway onto the field, yelling at them. This is what they're going to do. This is what they're going to do, because they wanted that shutout so badly.
They also couldn't a lot of the times last year do that because they didn't
know it.
They didn't know the playbook as well as they currently do. So that's a big difference in being able to have a full team teach the third and fourth string and the new guys, as opposed to just the new coaches trying to install and trying to do this. I mean, just the confidence in that. And I didn't mean to cut you off, but it's like, I think that matters big time when you look at, how this next man up is going to develop, because you have 35 coaches now, 40, 50 coaches now, as opposed to just a couple.
No, yeah. I mean, and they've obviously added a ton of support staff on top of it this offseason again. I think they're up to 75 coaches, 75 coaches, something to that extent total. Almost 100 people completely on staff, by the way. It's insane. You know how many they had during Riley's days? The amount that they had. Does anybody want to take a guess?
It was like 30, wasn't it?
It was 28.
There you go.
28. There's close to 100 people on staff making 50,000 and above. Like, if you don't think Oklahoma's not bought in on the idea of going to the SEC and making sure they have every opportunity given to them at the coaching positions, and now, obviously with the NIL and all that type of stuff, you're sorely mistaken. They have bought completely in on this, and recruiting is showing because of it. So having said all that about last week's game, everything, we're all going to be pretty reserved until we see. I think this is probably the measuring game for OU fans, because SMU is a good football team. They're going into the ACC next year. They're not your general, which I think is crazy that this is an ESPN Plus game, because SMU is essentially a Power 5 program playing at a G5 level right now. Their roster is littered with 4 stars. They have freaking Jordan Hudson as a wide receiver. And if you're an OU fan, if you are a diehard OU fan, you know that name. You know that name. That dude was committed to Oklahoma for like 5 months and then decommitted to go to TCU, only to show up at SMU, and now he is dominant at SMU. He was good at TCU. Don't get it twisted. He was good at TCU. But I think this game is a good measuring stick for the defense more than anything else. I don't want to undermine SMU's SMU's defense going up against Oklahoma's offense at all. I do not. I don't want to sit here and say that, Oklahoma's offense isn't going to be tested and all that type of stuff, because I think it is. I think I don't know that they have the depth to do what they need to do to Oklahoma for 4 quarters. And I could be completely wrong here. Could be completely wrong. But I do see why some national pundits say, okay, well, if Oklahoma's going to slip up after 73-0, this is going to be it. Because this is the game where they're not going to slip up at Tulsa, because they're going to be going and playing in front of a bunch of people at Tulsa. It's going to feel like a home game at Tulsa. It's going to be majority Oklahoma fans there. I would venture to guess 75% of the fans at Tulsa are going to be OU fans. Unfortunately,
no doubt about that.
No doubt. If there's one team in the non-con that could strike fear in Oklahoma, and I talked to some people yesterday about this that are in the Switzer Center, and they think the exact same thing. They're like, no, bro, this is a good football team, like a really good football team. And maybe it's coach speak, maybe it's whatever you want to call it, but I think they're hammering that home with the players. Like, you better take care of business. SMU can play. There's a reason why they're going to the ACC next year. There's a reason why Power Fives have been nibbling at them for the last decade coming to their conference, because they're a good football program. So both of you guys, I want to ask this. Do you buy into the potential upset hype? Do you buy into SMU being the standard at which, obviously 2 games in, it's all we can go off of, but the standard at which Oklahoma has to look at who they are until they play Cincinnati in week 4 maybe is SMU the toughest game they have going into Texas, potentially?
No, I would definitely assert that SMU presents more of a challenge than anybody the Sooners are going to see until the Cotton Bowl, the first weekend of October. And I've said it before. I know the game isn't played on paper, but if this team is if it's at all improved from where they were a year ago, if we see any measure of improvement all across the board from Oklahoma from 2022 to 2023, this team is talented enough and they have enough of a leg up on the opposition that they should be 5-0 heading into the Cotton Bowl against Texas. And from there, obviously, it can go a million different directions depending on the tenor and the outcome of that particular football game. It often dictates more than just what happens. Generally, what happens in the Cotton Bowl, what happens between Oklahoma and Texas, has a lot of bearing on what happens the rest of the season for both of those programs. So until then, if you're Oklahoma, you're trying to build as much momentum as possible heading into that game, because you're mindful of what happened last year and you want to come in to the Cotton Bowl. You want to come into the Texas State Fair in Dallas, Texas with a full head of steam. And you want the Longhorns to be as apprehensive about that game this year as you probably were last year, with the knowledge that you were going to have to cobble something together without your starting quarterback. So you want the Longhorns to be on their toes. this time around. And the easiest way to do that is just to handle business the way you ought to handle it against 5 teams that you ought to be able to handle your business against. SMU is not a scrub squad by any sense of the imagination, but Oklahoma is more talented, deeper, and I would say better coached. I would certainly say better coached. Just mindful of all that Venables and Lebby have accomplished as defensive and offensive play callers, respectively. This is a team that has the coaching edge on SMU. Who they do have a really bright young mind leading that program in Rhett Lashley, but Oklahoma has a distinct advantage in pretty much every single area of competition as these two teams stack up on paper. The big thing is, as we found out last year, game isn't played on paper. Right. And so this is the type of game where I do think we're going to be able to gauge how different Oklahoma is as a football team in the span of 12 months, because the 2022 Oklahoma Sooners would be very capable of losing this game. I don't know if we'll be able to say the same about the 2023 Oklahoma Sooners. We'll find out on Saturday, but this is the first real measuring stick competitively for this program.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the national perspective is coming from guys who, look, they're national dudes. They don't watch the games like we do. They shouldn't. That would be odd. They don't watch the game. I mean, I doubt that a guy like J.D. Piquel, who I like. I doubt a guy like, Barrett Sallee, like, who I like. Like, I doubt they sat there and really poured over the SMU La Tech game and the Oklahoma-Arkansas State games in their entirety, while also doing it to dozens of other games throughout the year, or throughout the weekend. I just don't think that's the case. So it seems predictable, I guess we can say, right? Because, the OU that they know for the last, decade is teams that are good on offense. You can get yours against Oklahoma. They're sure Oklahoma's going to put up some points, but you can get yours. And they look at it and say, well, Arkansas State, really, it doesn't matter much. They don't go into snap counts. They don't go into kind of the deep dive of why certain things happen, this, that, and the other. Like, they just don't. So I think a lot of the national perspective, take J.D. Piquel's perspective, like his reasoning behind picking, or at least teasing an upset, was that Preston Stone is the highest rated SMU signee ever. Well, in the modern recruiting era, right? Let's call it since 2000. The highest rated prospect since 2000 that SMU has signed, right? And then Jordan Hudson, former 5-star. And he said, if you can work that matchup, then, it's recipe for success and maybe a recipe for an upset. The only thing with being the highest rated prospect in SMU history in the modern era is that the SMU has only signed 4 blue chip prospects since 2000. So being the best prospect in SMU's, signing history in the modern era isn't exactly the same as saying that about Oklahoma, about LSU, Ohio State, Alabama, Clemson, these things. Like, so 2 of their blue chips that they've ever signed are on this team. Obviously. So, I mean, their tight end obviously is the other one. So they've never had a 5-star. He was a 4-star. I get it. He had the Bama offer. I get Oklahoma was interested. But when you go back and watch that game, Preston Stone looked like a kid that was making his second start. I mean, they made a lot of really easy stuff for him. They did the push passes that count, as completions. I think on the first series, he had like 3 or 4 completions for 1 yard until he overthrew a 3rd and 19 pass that nearly got picked off. The Jordan Hudson matchup, everybody says, hey, 5-star Jordan Hudson. Got to watch out for him. Of course, the young man is talented, but he didn't do anything against La Tech. He had the long touchdown, but when you go back and watch it, he pushes the defender down and has it wide open and walks into the end zone. Even the announcers, one of them, SMU biased, said, hey, look, they went back and watched it. They said, I don't know how this didn't get called for offensive pass interference. The only other catch that Jordan Hudson had was 1 catch for 6 yards. So, against La Tech, you think he's going to do that against Woody? Do you think he's going to do that against Gentry? He might, because he's talented. But I think that's where a lot of the national guys, kind of the window into where they look is, look.
Real quick. So on that point, Great point. But also, again, much like Oklahoma, how much do you think Oklahoma really showed? Particularly, let's go with what you're talking about and put it. So we know SMU is going to be a offensive juggernaut at some point during the season, and with Rhett Lashley calling the plays, Preston Stone at quarterback, obviously Jordan Hudson at wide receiver. Among Kamar Wheaton, they have at running back, they have, and another name Oklahoma fans should recognize. And what's his name that played at Miami? That was
Jalen Knighton, Rooster Knighton. You
Jalen
got
Knighton, yeah, Rooster
LJ
Knighton.
Johnson. They've got dogs.
They got a ton of dudes that Oklahoma fans will recognize because of recruiting, particularly if they follow recruiting. And so these are dudes that were committed to Oklahoma. Three.
Also dudes that were committed.
Well, I guess Kamara was silently committed at one point and kind of chose Alabama. And I guess silently committed maybe a little much for some OU fans that remember that recruitment. But yeah, he told DeMarco he was coming to Oklahoma on numerous occasions. There's a reason why when I'm trying to remember where I was at. I feel like I was in Colorado and I get a phone call from Steve Wilfong and he was like, it's Oklahoma. He's committed to Oklahoma. Okay, so we both put our crystal balls in for that one. And I know that's like completely opposite what we're talking about here, but point is that they have dudes, like you said, they have dudes on their offense that are good players, like talented players. Kamar Wheaton was at Alabama.
Yeah, but he's not at Alabama anymore.
Jay Naughton's at Miami, right? For various reasons.
LJ Johnson isn't at A&M. And I know he followed Lashley from Miami, but you've got a lot of dudes that just showed up there. And I think, and I know we've, I can't say, oh, I love our transfers, but other transfers are no good. Like there's a reason they all transferred from SEC programs, all this to the American. And it's not because they were like world beaters.
Right. Well, Kamar Wheaton transferred to SMU because he got in trouble. And number one, number two, he got kicked off the team. Number three, at Alabama. Number three, he's from Dallas. And SMU, ironically, was the third team between Alabama, SMU, and Oklahoma. And he had a strong affinity for that school. Most people don't realize how close he was to committing to SMU on multiple occasions. So that one made sense, regardless of, they're at American, but SMU's going to the ACC next year. So this whole American train of thought, we've got to get out of there. Like they are a Power 5 program.
They've committed to an American. They committed to an American. Right. Happens to be going to the ACC.
Right. It happens to be going to the ACC, but they're essentially a Power 5 program at this point, right? Like the talent, they have Power 5 talent.
They have Power 5 money and the Power 5 market. But
is Sherwood, what's his name? Still going to run the is he going to run the NIL? But this time it's legal. What's his name? Sherwood. Oh my God. Off of the Pony Express. Y'all know what I'm talking about?
That in so long. But they've had 1 10-win season since the death penalty, right? So
yeah, fair enough.
In the American.
Okay, so let's throw all that out. What you said, like, I don't think he's gonna do this against Oklahoma. There's a world where they did the exact same thing against La Tech that Oklahoma did against Arkansas State, where they just did not show a whole lot. They did not target him on purpose. They want him to come in not looking like that's going to be our go-to guy. We're going to aim this guy over and
And that's a real good point, Brandon, because I imagine there's some SMU fans looking at what OU did last weekend and going, Jalil Farouk didn't catch a pass. Austin Stogner didn't catch a pass. How legit is this Oklahoma offense?
Yeah. That is so that's kind of what I was getting at, is like, just because that happened, I don't want Oklahoma fans, and you made a great point, Travis. Like that was a really good point. But I also don't want Oklahoma fans to sit here and think, if Hudson goes off for 110 yards or 120 yards receiving off 8 catches, like, well, I thought the OU Insider pregame podcast said that he wasn't gonna.
No, well, he's got all the ability.
Make it clear, like this cat can ball.
He's got all the ability, but I also. Preston Stone made his second start of his career.
Correct.
It is a little bit different when Dylan Gabriel has a whole season with Jalil Farouk, who has, he's the second leading passer, historically in active college football right now. Like there's a certain point where you're like, all right, this Preston Stone kid, highly rated, sure. But I mean, it's a drop off from Tanner Mordecai. Tanner Mordecai's thrown for 8,000 yards. He threw for 33 touchdowns, 10 interceptions last year. Like Preston Stone may eventually be that dude, but this is the biggest environment he's ever played in. He's been sitting the bench behind Tanner the last 2 years. He made one start as a redshirt freshman, but I think at some point you want to see at least some, I don't know, some reps, right? Like it's kind of tough to be like, hey, we're gonna get just a couple reps with you and Jordan, real game time against like full speed with bullets flying, and then go into Norman, Oklahoma, and do it.
No, I totally agree. I'm trying to look at Tanner Mordecai's stats actually from last weekend. He's at Wisconsin, so you take that for what it is. He actually only threw for 189 yards.
He didn't play much though, did
he? He threw 31 times for 89 yards. Typical Wisconsin. Even though they're spreading it out, they're not doing like they got like 20 quarterbacks. So I think that's the weird part. Like I think they got 7 through the transfer portal. So one of them obviously being Evers from Oklahoma. His brother will be in Norman this weekend. Drew
and Matauer's little brother is committed there too. Long blonde hair.
Yep. Well, Drew Evers, 2026 offensive lineman, will be in Norman this weekend. He's offered from Oklahoma, and I think Oklahoma has a really good shot there. Family has zero disdain for the university because they helped them land at a big spot, and they have been great to that family from what I've heard. And Parker, you've talked to them as well. Like they're talk about an awesome family. Like the mom, dad, like they're great people.
Yeah, they haven't lost any love for Oklahoma.
No,
none whatsoever.
Great people. Just so like most families would sit there and just have disdain for how things went, and they're so level-headed about it, which is just shocking, right? Like, because that's just not how the world works these days. So good on them, because it just shows you the type of people they are. That just totally solidifies it too. On the SMU game, atmosphere wise, I think we gotta discuss the Lindsay Street and the atmosphere and all that type of stuff before. I mean, that's part of the game, unfortunately, because it's been a hot topic this week. We have something cooking behind the scenes potentially in that to help Lindsay Street kick off a little bit more, and it has nothing to do with us doing what other people have done and save Lindsay Street or anything like no. This actually was brought to us by members of our board, and I'm just going to throw this out there because I want to get this, Parker. I want to get this the ball rolling. There are members on our board that are putting together an OU Insider tailgate. And we have not got the logistics set up. We haven't got anything. So it will not happen during the SMU game. Our hope is by Iowa State that we can have something going for you all. And we're going to make it interesting for those that are OU Insider members getting into the tailgate. And then those that want to be OU Insider members will have certain business cards. We'll have certain things that we will give you with promo codes and all that type of stuff. That way you can come in, hang out, get to know the community of OU fans that feel the same way about Oklahoma and are diehard just like you. And we're trying to have a spot on Lindsay Street. We're going to try to do a whole lot of stuff there that will be very, very intriguing for our members and the fan base, with food, with, obviously beer will be involved because the fans will bring their beer and all that type of stuff. And Olipop, we probably could get Olipop sponsored in there.
That's what's up, baby.
Having them around and having several choices of Olipop for you all to drink if you want to drink Coke instead of your favorite lubricant that will get you roused up a little bit more. So it's at the infancy stages right now, but we did want to throw that out there to you guys. That way you have an idea of what we're looking at and what we're going to try to do to help make the atmosphere better on our end. because guess what? If OU is doing well, OU Insider's doing well. And that's just that's the facts. So, and that even counts with tailgating. So we're going to try to do everything we can to help make the tailgating scene a lot better for OU fans. And we've got people involved that are wanting to do this, that are diehards wanting, and they brought it to us, literally brought it to us out of the blue. In the right, Parker? Like just randomly. And they have sponsors that they want to have involved. Like it's just crazy. Like it's going to be kind of neat once we get everything lined up. And we hope to have that at least by Iowa State, potentially by when they return in October, for sure. At least half the season, we should have this thing going. All right. But with that said, the tailgating scene, guys, what's your expectation? Travis, you're the fan on here. You're the voice of the fan on here compared to Parker and I. So let's because you have the pulse of the fan compared, like you and JP understand the fans' way of thinking far greater than anybody else that does the podcast and stuff like that, because you're them. We aren't allowed to be fans. Parker and I grew up OU fans. Look at everything behind me. Like all this is from either my family that donated, like the statues, or it's stuff that my kids and everybody's accumulated that's been given to them. And we just kind of stacked it up here as a background piece. But it shows the fandom that we had in this house until this job became a job. And you had to throw that out the window. Parker, the same way, went to OU, graduated 2 degrees, family, went to Oklahoma, graduated from there. Fans, but we don't understand them the way you do because we're not around it every day. We don't get the pulse the way you do because we have to look at it completely different now. So where is your mindset, the fans' mindset? How are you hearing anything that's going to have this thing looking a lot better on Lindsay Street and anywhere else this week, considering 5 p.m. kickoff? OU has called out the fans, essentially. Brent Venables.
Yeah.
Has it resonate? Has it even resonated? Has it been talked about?
It's tough because, you can talk about it, but when you take away tailgating on Lindsay and all these tailgaters, like the really like diehard tailgaters that actually invest money in this, they bring out their TV, they cook, they do all the stuff that you expect at a tailgate. Those people didn't stop tailgating when they shut Lindsay down. So they found new spots. Well, now they've gotten nice and comfy at those new spots. All the people that always come to the games, they know exactly where to find them. They don't need to change. And I think it's a bit unfair to ask those people to move again now after and say, hey, what the heck? We opened Lindsay up. Where are you at? Well, when you closed Lindsay the first time, you moved us. And there's a nice big parking lot right over here that we can load up all of our stuff, drop it off, and then drive off. Now, I do think that matters a bit. I know a lot of people have talked about, well, there's no close parking lot on Lindsay now. There used to be a big parking lot back there where you could just unload and walk your stuff a very short distance. The problem is, I don't think a lot of people showed up to tailgate on Lindsay last weekend and thought, oh, I've got my tent, I've got my grill, I've got my coolers, I've got all this, that, and the other. I got my chairs, I got my TV, but the parking's too far away, so I'm just not going to set up. Like, I think that might be easier now to say in retrospect from people who weren't going to set up there anyways. Maybe they're just saying, oh, well, that would probably be a bummer. So maybe I think something like getting a gator or a golf cart with a trailer on it and saying, hey, we're going to run tailgate, a tailgate trailer essentially, and help you get all your stuff to there, something like that. And when I was at OU, it was very Greek. Like the fraternities made up a strong presence on Lindsay. And that's what it was. It doesn't need to be all Greek. Of course, I'm not saying that, but it helped at least build a bit of the presence, and it helped bring a lot of young people. It helped bring kind of that college atmosphere that sometimes you don't get at other tailgates that may be nicer tailgates, but you get that real college feel if there are more college students involved in it.
Yeah, no. So I can't remember if this was 2014, 2013, somewhere around there. Amy and I, my father was one of the original people that started Through Tubing Solution with Andy Ferguson and Stan Loving. They were the vice president and president of Through Tubing TTS Oil Company. It's a completions company kind of, and fishing company. And my father was one of the first employees. He ended up being a regional manager at multiple locations and all that type of stuff. So I grew up around that, and they're big donors to the University of Oklahoma, big donors. And Stan Loving knew a bunch of people that were higher up. And Stan, if you're listening, I mean, you probably are. Appreciate you, buddy. Always have. And they invited us to a tailgate. And I can't remember how this happened, but there's other people around. And it was essentially the guy running the tailgate is the guy that built the Wynn Hotel in Las Vegas, because his daughter or daughters were in a sorority at Oklahoma. So they ran that whole thing. And there were sororities and frat guys there and all that type of stuff. So what you're saying is, and I totally agree, you have to have a mixture between the older crowd, the adult crowd, and the college crowd to make that thing rock, because it has to have that feel. There's got to be kids playing in the street that's blocked off, obviously, right? Playing catch in the street like we did when we grew up. Like, it was packed. You had kids playing in the street. The fans would walk around the small little touch football game that everybody had going on in the middle of the road on Lindsay Street. You remember those days? Like, it was very cool. And my idea for this is that on Friday, you block it off. You block Lindsay Street starting at like 5 p.m., right? Whether it's at Jenkins, whether it's at Asp, it doesn't matter. Between there, you block it off. And you have two guys standing there, and they have the fans have between 5 and 9 o'clock to set up. And what they'll say is, hey, I've got a tailgate. The stuff's in the back here. They'll go, the security people can walk back there. Oh, you're going to do this anyways. You might as well man it up. If you're going to have people helping, block it off and have people able to drive their vehicles, and you'll move the signs or the barricades, right? You move them, open it up, let them drive, and let them set up. And then you open it for them when they leave. And you continually do that. They have 4 hours. They show up from 5 to 9 the day before, or they can show up early in the morning from 6 to or 7 to whenever and set up, and they'll have the same thing. We're going to set up a tailgate, and they let people drive and set up, but they have to remove their vehicles after they're done unloading and go park wherever they're going to go park. And then when they're done with it, they come and do the same thing. That's our tailgate. They give them a little slip that says tailgate on Lindsay, right? They have their tailgate. So they show it with their card after they're done setting up, right? They hand it to them. And then when they come back with their vehicle to load back up, they show the card and they open the barricade up to let them go with their car and do all that. I mean, that to me, that seems like the most logical thing to do. If there's not going to be a parking spot because they decided to build those monstrosities of dorms there that nobody even lives in. And I mean, am I wrong or am I wrong?
Yeah.
I mean,
the cross slander, I'm here for it.
I mean, it was stupid. It was a great idea that was poorly executed because nobody wants to live in those dorms. There's so many rent homes and apartment complexes that have so much more to provide. And if you're going to be paying for as much as they pay for those dorms, go get a pool that you can go to. Go get a game room and stuff like that you can have on your apartment complex and be able to do and go and do whatever you please. So I think there's ways to do it. And maybe Travis, you and I, the ways that if you're listening, maybe you can combine these two ideas. So
I think in the, like, the helping people get set up, if everybody does it in a specific amount of time, like in a short window, you can get set up rather quickly. If this were to become hey, we're going to camp out before Bama comes to town, like, I could totally see people just all night out there just having fun.
Oh, I think
whatever.
they're going to, because that game is going to be lit.
But that's the thing. Like that's
game
what
1, 2024. Oh my God. Yes.
But that's what I would like. You said a phrase. You said a phrase that I think is very important, and it was remember those days.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that matters big time, because I think a lot of the people that are talking about tailgating on Lindsay, they're talking to people that are not currently going to tailgate on Lindsay. They are talking to people that have vivid memories of when they, as younger people, used to tailgate on Lindsay. So it's feeding into the nostalgia and the vintage type stuff, like vintage shirts right now. Like my guy that Crown Vintage that does all the vintage stuff, like shirts like this, like the vintage Oklahoma football, like that's popular. People like that, right? Like if you were to, sell, that's a reason like Ida Red here in Tulsa sells Zingo shirts, because Bell's Amusement Park, and people are like, oh man, that was a fun time. Do you remember growing up going to Bell's? Well, there's a reason that nobody's reopening Bell's. Like, and if you did reopen Bell's, all the people that you would want to go that enjoyed it as kids, guess what? They've got kids now. They got soccer practice. They've got cheer. They've got all that. I mean, Brandon, you know this. You got a whole gaggle of kids with another on the way.
Yeah,
and that's the
maybe
thing
in the next week or two.
He doesn't have a gaggle until the next one arrives. At that point,
hey, and she will be here in the next. From what we found out yesterday, we don't think she'll make it to Cincinnati.
Okay, so you're definitely not going to Tulsa next week then.
Yeah, there's a good chance. There's a decent chance she's here next week, but I think the Cincinnati week is where it's going to pop. So my odds of making it to Cincinnati, if she's not born, I will not go to Cincinnati. If she is born, I will make the 24-hour trek back and forth, because my mom, her mom, and everybody else and their dog will be there to help her, and I'm useless. I don't have the unbeknownst to those in this day and age, I do not have the equipment to help, despite what could be done this day and age and what people think and want. So I'll leave it at that. Parker, but you got that smirk because I'm taking a shot at it.
But my point, you got a bunch of kids, right? So you're not going to tailgate on Lindsay. Like, and
whoa. I can't tailgate on Lindsay because I got a job to do. But we're going to try. We're trying to set up one on Lindsay.
But again, that's my point, right? You got a bunch, like you're going to have kids with you. You're going to have a new baby, like Parker, who would tailgate on Lindsay. He'd be out there. Well, he's going to be working now, right? I would be tailgating on Lindsay. Well, I might be doing radio. Like, there are people that grew up, or at least in college, were tailgating on Lindsay. Mm-hmm. And again, they got kids' soccer games still. They got their own kids' football games on Friday night that they're going to. They've all grown to a point where they can't spend Friday night and all day Saturday just pounding beers like we could in college. So you're going to need that newer generation of, again, the Greek community to really step up and say, hey, look, we'll be a bit of the foundation here. Now, other tailgaters, absolutely. Come one, come all type situation, like fill it in. But tailgating on Lindsay will never return to what it once was until it's cool for college kids to be there again.
Right.
Like, that's what it needs to be.
You say that, and this is real quick. 2003, OU's playing Oklahoma State at home, and Oklahoma State beat OU back-to-back years in 2001 and 2002. So it was a big deal. This was the let her rip game by Les Miles when Oklahoma held them at the goal line. And I'm totally going to, I'm telling on myself here. So at this point, I am a sophomore at SWAZU. I'm done playing football at this point. And me and my buddies, Jason Schilling, Chad Kinzer, like these guys that a couple more Oklahoma State guys, Damian Parks, all these guys. We go down to Norman the night before, and we literally set up a tailgate and like made sure we got it on Lindsay. Like, we wanted to get on Lindsay. It was the coolest thing ever. And we were these poor college kids that we had like this crappy crappy grill that was like really small and this small little overhead tent. But it was so great because all these OU and OSU fans helped us out. And we slept in that college game day. We slept in our car and then woke up at like 4:00 in the morning and then went and laid down on the front row of college game day so that we could so we got like another few hours of sleep. And we woke up, people were like standing over us. It was kind of weird. And so, but this is college. Like, this is what you did in college because Lindsay was cool. That's why we did it. It was so cool to tailgate there. And it, like you said, is going to take time to get that back. It's going to take time. It's going to take not just this year. I think it'll take this year, and I think it'll take the Alabama game. Because once the Alabama game kicks off and everybody sees how cool it's going to look when it's lined up again, I think that is where we're going to see. And I think you're going to start seeing some of that this weekend. But I think it's not going to look like where you couldn't walk down, the sidewalk in between the two. Because that's the other thing that people forget is that you had the row along the street, you had the sidewalk, and then you had where the grass was on the other side of the sidewalk, more tailgates. It wasn't just on right next to the street. It was rows of tailgating and rows of tailgating. That's what made it cool. It was so big. It was 3 or 4 rows deep. And then you had that big field that everybody would go and play in with all those kids, or they would play in the street. And that's what made it cool. Like, they're trying to recreate something that they took a big chunk out of. It's not just the row of tailgating. It was the rows of tailgating on Lindsay. Do you remember that, Travis?
Oh, absolutely. I remember walking down like on
Parker has not said anything, by the way. He's just like,
in between the rows.
I am not familiar with the tailgating scene at Oklahoma at all.
But okay. I would walk, that sidewalk in between the rows. You'd always have the ping pong ball that got loose, right? I mean, it was like, and then you had, again, like you said, the kids playing in the field back behind there. It was, but it was.
That's now a parking garage.
It was, yeah. And it was cool. It was college. And I don't know what when we talk about it on OU Insider, like in those comments, tailgating on Lindsay, it's okay. Where were you? You weren't set up on Lindsay. Oh, well, again, my point earlier, kids had a soccer game. Oh man, my wife wouldn't let me. All those people that are saying what we're saying right now, how cool it was, they're not there. And
they're in their 40s now, 30s and 40s now.
Right. They're the ones that shouldn't necessarily be relied on to help prop it up. So however you do it, you got to make it cool, but you got to make it cool to college kids. So I don't know if you need to give away jewels or fidget spinners, or I don't know. Maybe you got to have a station where you scuff up all their white tennis shoes, or, I don't know. I don't know what you got to do, but like you have to make it cool to college kids again, or else
make it all inclusive.
Or it's just going to feel a bit gilded. It's going to feel like a bunch of people that are just trying to kind of get it back to how they remember it. And it needs to be organic. It needs to be, hey, you're allowed to do this now, college kids. And it needs to be the college kids that do it, because everybody else that wasn't there last week had good reason not to be there.
So why doesn't BV and Joe C go to all the frat houses and sororities and like prop them up and tell them like, hey, we need you on Lindsay Street. We want this.
Hey, send Porter to do it. He tried it, right?
But yeah, that's what I mean. That's kind of the idea that I was thinking of, was Porter.
Right. It's like,
the same thing. All the, I mean, Kelvin Sampson, all of them did that. Every basketball.
Did that. I think you have to use some type of incentive, right? Like, hey, we'll do a best tailgate. We'll do a best food. We'll do a best this, that, or the other. We'll have some situations out there, but that's what, like, the incentive has to be because it's the coolest place to be. Yeah. That's why you want to be out there. And until Lindsay Street is the coolest place to be, you won't get the college kids.
Yeah. All right. Back to the game. Again, kickoff 7 or 5 p.m. ESPN Plus. Make sure that you are subscribed to ESPN Plus, because Soonersports.tv, all that will have post game. The ESPN Plus will have the game streaming. You'll have all that you need on ESPN plus a lot more. No pun intended. Like, it is, ESPN Plus is awesome. If you like 30 for 30s, if you like being able to go and watch everything you can on Sooner.tv or Sooner Vision, that's the place to go. And I know I'm doing an advertisement for the university. You're welcome. But as far as a game goes, 3 things that Oklahoma has to do to make this game turn out the way it's supposed to. What's the spread on it, by the way, before I get into that?
16.5.
Okay. For them to cover, what are the 3 things that Oklahoma has to do?
Contain Preston Stone would be one, because if you look at the inferior teams from a talent perspective over the last few years that Oklahoma has struggled with, oftentimes there is a common denominator, and that is a mobile quarterback who can get outside the pocket and hurt you with his legs. That is something that the Sooners have displayed vulnerabilities in the past as far as coping with and shutting down. Garrett Green last year at the West Virginia game is a perfect example of this, right? West Virginia should not have been anywhere close to in position to beat Oklahoma in the winning minutes of that game. But the reason they were is not the only reason, but a big part of the reason was Garrett Green. So Oklahoma is going to have to keep Preston Stone from gashing them with his legs. I think that is certainly one thing. I don't want to monopolize this conversation. So, Trav, you go ahead. Give us number 2.
No. I want everybody to do 3 things.
You want all of us? I was thinking we each
9 total things. 9.
Yeah, well, we each have a different opinion of why, and if we have the same opinion, just
sure. Okay. Yeah. I think the second thing will have to be win the battle in the trenches, which is a very there's very little nuance or novelty to that observation, but Oklahoma should be better than SMU in the trenches. So go and prove it. Go and prove that you can dominate both offensively and defensively at the line of scrimmage, at the point of attack, because that is something that when you're going up against a group of 5 program, you ought to do. That is a bare minimum expectation. Win the line of scrimmage. So I got to see Oklahoma do that. And I mentioned it on the live on Wednesday, and some people were like, were you really comparing Jordan Hudson to Xavier Worthy and Quentin Johnson? No, I wasn't. But the point I made on the live, and the point I'll make again, is that when you have a really talented wide receiver on the other side, and SMU has that in Jordan Hudson, objectively, that is a very, very talented football player. You need to have a guy that can step up and hold his own in man coverage out on the perimeter against a guy like that. And that is something that has been lacking in years past at Oklahoma. Woody Washington was that guy in 2020 when he was fully healthy and playing his best ball at the cornerback position. He's obviously battled injuries since then. He's 100% now as a 5th-year senior in 2023. And so whether it's him or Gentry Williams that gets the assignment for the lion's share of the snaps opposite Jordan Hudson, we got to see that guy, whoever that may be, and I'm assuming it's going to be Woody, but it just as well could be Gentry. We got to see that guy hold his own against a guy that, at least according to one recruiting service, was a 5-star prospect in the class of 2022.
Right. Go ahead, Jeff.
All right. He got some good ones. I'm going to say that OU has to get their edges around their behemoth tackles that they have at SMU. I mean, they've got some monsters there. You've got on the right side, I believe you got Hiron White, who's 6'7", 330. He is he's a grad transfer from Missouri. He didn't play last year because of injury, but he is a big old boy at 6'7", 330. And then you've got Marcus Bryant holding down the other tackle spot. He is 6'8", 318. He's a senior as well. So 6'7" and 6'8", those are obviously some big tackles. But when you get guys like Rondell Bothroyd and Trace Ford and R. Mason Thomas and these guys that are quick around the outside, like that's I think so much of their play can disrupt what SMU wants to do, because if you watch the SMU game and a lot of just what Lashley does, they do a lot of push passes, bubble screens, everything going sideways. Well, if those edge rushers can get up the field, they're going to get some tackles for loss this game. And if he drops back and they're able to get around him, then we're gonna have more than one sack this game. So I would say that the edge play is going to be a big deal. So next, I think the defensive front of SMU is pretty good. They've got one, I believe, Jordan Miller, number 6. They've just got one guy over 300 pounds. He's their nose tackle, according to their official roster. So he came over from Miami. He's a good player. But outside of that, I think you can run on these guys. I think you can lean on them and run on them a little bit. So I think getting that front defensive line worn down early with up-tempo stuff and having get to their second string, specifically on the defensive front, if you can get to their second string there, then it should be easy sledding the rest of the way. And then lastly, Dillon Gabriel needs to look as sharp as Dillon Gabriel did in week 1. I mean, simple as that. That needs to be Dillon Gabriel going forward, because he's got Jackson Arnold breathing down his neck. Not saying that Jackson's going to take his job if he has a, the first sign of trouble. Once he has more than 3 incompletions a game, I don't want to hear any chants for Jackson, but he's got to be that sharp. I have no reason to believe that he won't be. So I think Dillon Gabriel, the quick stuff, he was very decisive. When you go back and watch that game, I mean, he was extremely decisive. You can run or pass 2 runs and a pass off of most of everything in Levy's playbook, right? You can hand it off, you can take it, or you can throw it. And as far as decision-making goes, Jackson Arnold even touched on it in the postgame about Dillon's play. His decision-making was great, was absolutely great. So Dillon being the Dillon we saw last week, and in just his crispness, his downfield passing, and then getting our edge play where it needs to be, and then getting that defensive front worn down, especially big Jordan Miller right in the middle.
Yeah, so I said this on the live the other day, and I still believe this 100%, even a couple days later. We're recording this on a Friday morning. It'll be up Friday afternoon. You should have all day Friday and all day Sunday, or all day Saturday, to listen to this podcast, hopefully. I generally feel that at some point this season, and I think right now is probably the perfect time to do it. Game 2, you really didn't show this guy very much. Game 1, I know you tried a few targets here or there. They didn't work out, whether coverage, whether, Dillon got rushed, or whatever the reasoning may have been. Maybe they had to, get out of the play and check out of it. I don't know. All depending on various variables. You got to get Stogner the ball over the middle at some point, because if you think that the deep outside routes and the outside receivers are going to continually stay open when there's no threat of intermediate middle routes, you're smoking crack. Like, Braden Willis was a problem for teams last year because they hit him over the middle. You have, and I don't want to undermine how good Braden Willis was, but you have a traditional NFL tight end in Austin Stogner, a guy that could have went last year, and from what I'm told, would have been drafted in the first 4, 5, 6 rounds, something like that. Like, he would have been before round 7. And there's some because of how his blocking, they know he could catch, they know he could run routes, they know he was really good at that because of Oklahoma. But after going to South Carolina, he became a really good run blocker, and that's what he needed to do. He needed to become a really good run blocker. That was his weakest point in his repertoire, in his arsenal, if you will. And he has that now. He was unbelievable. I think he graded out the best out of anybody in run blocking on Saturday out of anybody, whether O-line, anything. Like, that dude graded out amazing from what I'm told. And that shows you the jump. But now you've got to use him in the passing game. You have to get him going. We've seen how good Oklahoma's offense can be when Stogg's rolling. Go look at 2020. That dude, and even the beginning of 2021, that dude was an animal before he got hurt. Flat out animal. And then look at the Oklahoma State game. In the first half, they used Stogner numerous times. They were up by 2 touchdowns going into halftime. And they were moving the ball at will until they stopped looking at him. I think the tight end is such a crucial piece to any offense, in particular Oklahoma's offense, that you have to have him. And you've got to use him over the middle. You've got to make that safety account for him every time he goes out for a route. Because if you don't, the safety's just going to play over the top of your outside receivers. And then what? And then what? If you're not going to look over the middle, what do they care? Stogner could be wide open. If you're not going to throw to him, what do they care? So I think you have to get him at least 3 receptions this weekend. 3. If you're not going to do 3, you need to have one big one to where it's like 30 yards, 40 yards, something to that extent over the middle. That where it always is in the back of those safeties' minds, like, okay, in the linebackers' minds, dude, this guy could go out and he's going to be a problem if he does. Number 2, on defense, as much as we want to make of Preston Stone and Jordan Hudson, well, then the pass rush has to be good. It sounds like our Mason Thomas is going to be back this weekend. Sounds. Nobody can tell me whether he's 100% or not with his ankle. If he is at least 95%, I will take a 95% our Mason Thomas coming off the edge against almost anybody. And I know that sounds crazy, but when I talk to people within the program, they think he could be the best player on this defense. And that is not hyperbole. Like, again, I said this on the live. I'm saying it again. Everybody that's told me that are the most black and white. There is no gray area. There is no hyperbole type people in this world. Like, they are straight in the front. They're going to tell you whether a dude stinks or whether a dude can ball. And they say that he has a chance and may be, exact quote, may be the best player on the defense. So if he's back and you have Rondell Bothroyd already causing problems, and they were max protecting, they were 3-step drops. The second that back foot hit for Arkansas State's quarterback, that ball was out. Like, it was quick. Boom, 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 out, boom, out. As quickly as they possibly could. A lot of quick screens, a lot of quick go routes where they were predetermined routes, quick 3-step drop. You knew where you were going with the ball the second you drop back. And they max protected. And Bothroyd was getting back there a lot. Downs got back there a lot. But the problem is they rolled out to the other side and there was nobody to be found. Well, you're going to roll right into our Mason Thomas, or our Mason Thomas is going to put you right into Bothroyd and or Dejon Terry or Jordan Kelly, Isaiah Coe, Grayson Halton, Kelvin Gilliam, like you name it. They've got guys on the inside now. And I also think PJ Adebawore has got to be used more on third down. Does anybody watch on the 3 or 4 third downs that he was in, how quickly he got to the quarterback last Saturday? But again, the ball was out before he could get there. But I mean, if it was more of a normal spread and he didn't have to come from so far out because of how they were lining up in double tights and max protects, dude, they could have had like 15 sacks on Saturday, like legit 15 sacks. Like, those two are different. Their first steps in Bothroyd different. Downs is a lot quicker this year. They've got to get to the quarterback. They've got to make Preston Stone so uncomfortable that he's overthrowing constantly. They have to. And then number 3, again, consistency. They need to establish the run, and they need to make sure that Dylan Gabriel has something to play off of and allow him to be comfortable all game. Because if they can do those 3 things, this is, I think, a 2 or 3 touchdown game. If they can't, you're going to run into some problems because SMU is going to be able to keep up with you. That's facts. So to me, those are the three things they've got to do. We already know they got to shut down Jordan Hudson. Like we get it. They gotta make sure the run game doesn't get going with Kamar Wheaton and Rooster, right? Like we get it. We get it. Like outside of that, those are the three things I think is going to happen. And I think need to be done for Oklahoma to take care of business and to cover. All right. Before we go, real quick, game predictions, and we're out.
I got 48-24 Oklahoma over SMU.
I have 48-17 Oklahoma over Southern Methodist.
All right. And I am going to have, I think it was 44-20 Oklahoma. And so I think Parker, you and I have SMU scoring more. I think they can get close to 3 touchdowns. I do. I honestly think they could get in the 30s with how good their offense is if Oklahoma doesn't take care of business. Like they're that good offensively. So you better watch out, Sooners fans. This game is either going to turn out like we just said, or it's going to be super, super, super nail biter. There's no in between on this one. 0 in between. There's no, yeah, it was close, but Oklahoma pulled away in the fourth quarter. No, bro. If it's close going to the fourth quarter, buttholes are going to be puckering up because they're going to stay with they're going to stay with Oklahoma to the end. Do you agree with that?
I disagree because I don't think their depth is worth anything. Like, I mean, if you look at like snap leaders that Jesse put up, right? If you look at snap leaders, like I think Danny had like 23 snaps, like 4 tackles, whatnot. Like he had
their game was different. They played law.
But he had 170, right. But he had 170 snaps through 3 games last year, right? Like the ability to be fresh and then bring in depth. I think our front lines are better and more conditioned, and I think our backups are better. I think SMU's depth, just like it did last week, I think it's going to fall off because I don't think SMU. I think SMU's got some talent on the first string, undeniable talent on the first string. I just don't think they're very deep. So I think the second half it could be a pull away situation, personally.
What about you, Parker? Like, do you think if it's close going into the fourth quarter, they stick with them, or do you think Oklahoma pulls away?
I think that
is a scenario.
I don't have an answer for you. I think that is going to be where we find out how different this team is in 2023.
No, I agree. And I think that's where I have my reservations because of what we saw last year. So that's why I say what I said earlier about the puckering up. All right. That's going to do it for this version of the OU Insider Under the Visor Sooners podcast, pregame podcast, mind you. If you're not subscribed to OU Insider, look, there is a tweet that I have on Twitter, and I'm being very, very giving here lately, and we're growing super fast, but we also want those that have reservations of what they're going to get if they go to OU Insider. I want you all to at least just take a look. Take a look because we're shocked with how fast we've grown since we've gotten there. But we also get a lot of, well, I would, but I don't know if this and this is worth it, or this and this is worth it, or this is worth it. I don't subscribe to anybody because I don't think that paying for this is worth it. Well, here's what I'm going to do for you. Hit me up on Twitter. There's a GIF that I have tweeted out right now. And it says, come join us. If you comment on that GIF, I will personally DM you with a promo code and a free 30 days. If you do not want to do that, you can go to OU Insider right now. You can sign up right now. It's $9.95 per month. Or you can do a whole year and it's $99.95, which would get you all the way to this point next year, which would get you all through the season, both national signing days, all the transfer stuff, the bowl game, the spring stuff, all the junior days, all the official visits, the champion barbecue, the party in the palace, the fall camp for 2024, heading into the SEC, and so much more, and the beginning of the season next year. which would be Alabama. If you sign up right now, you get a whole year. And it's worth it because we drop stuff all day. We got notes on visitors coming this weekend. There's some big 25 guys coming in. Oklahoma's almost got 2024 lined up. We got a bunch of stuff on Danny Okoye. We've got stuff on Nigel Smith. We've got all kinds of stuff of where guys are leading and where Oklahoma stands with top 150 players in the country and top D linemen in the country. Oklahoma is changing the game and how they recruit the defensive line, and we have that for you on OU Insider. Plus, Parker has a couple of potential 5-star offensive line notes and all kinds of stuff going for you on OU Insider right now. So if you're on OU, and Grill Boy right there has his pregame write-up that he does. It's very well done. Very fan-oriented, very open and honest about the fans' take on the game, the pregame, their thoughts, his thoughts, all that type of stuff. And it's a different type of write-up and something everybody seems to enjoy. That is part of what you get on OU Insider, plus a ton of interviews, video interviews, all that type of stuff. Parker will be seeing commitment Ivan Carry on tonight. I will be at Nigel Smith's commitment announcement, and there's a chance that there will be a few other people there. And if you want to know who those other people are, you can go to OU Insider. We've talked about that on there. All types of stuff right now. $99.95 for a whole year, $9.99 a month, or hit me up on that GIF on Twitter, and I will see if I can't help you out to at least get you a 30-day free trial and see if you like it. All right. Also subscribe to this YouTube channel, or go to JP and Travis's YouTube channel and you can subscribe there as well. They do a live every week and a couple of other interviews on there as well. So subscribe to our YouTube channels and give us a like, 5 stars, all that type of stuff, thumbs up, whatever you do on the podcast, whatever platform you listen to. We appreciate you. We do this for you all, and we can't thank you guys enough. All right. That's going to do it for this version of the OU Insider Under the Visor Sooners pregame podcast. For Travis Davison, for Parker Thune, my name's Brandon Drum. You guys have a blessed night.